I've been researching something called declarative questioning or statement strategy. It is a Jedi-level move for interviews, coaching, and even sales conversations.
Welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius.
Marshall!
Ramsey!
I've always wanted to do that. Hey, this is cool. I heard about what you wanted to talk about today, and it pinged a few things for me that really were affirmed and confirmed in my coaching training that I did, which I'm getting reaccredited for as we speak. And let's bottom line it for people, because I think this is going to spell it out very quickly. Instead of asking a question, a direct question, you just make a confident, open-ended statement that invites a response or an insight or a clarification, right? So that's what we're talking about today.
All right. So we've written 2 books on questions.
Yep.
And now we're giving you another level.
This is exactly right. This is exactly right.
And this is one of those things, as I started to learn more about it, it's really cool because you go, oh, yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was a thing. So
that's why this is a confirmation and an affirmation for me, because I was like, oh, I've got to eliminate that from my coaching. No. It's one of the tools of coaching.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I was watching this podcast, and there was 2 ex-CIA operatives.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about this is one of the mind tricks that they teach to the CIA guys. And they've been using it since like World War II.
Mm-hmm.
You got a spy, you need to gather information. So they would, the spy would be hanging out at a bar where, say, sailors from, opposing ships might be drinking. And they would, instead of asking them questions, right, because they've all been trained not to answer questions, right? Loose lips sink ships, all those, things that we heard about. But nobody told them not to respond to a statement.
Right.
And so, especially an inaccurate statement.
Right.
So something like that's a beautiful ship. I bet that thing goes 19 knots.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, it goes a lot faster than that. All of a sudden, they're just, spilling all the goods, and, nobody's asked a question, but yet all this information is getting exchanged.
Right. I feel like this is half of my life is
just 50% of Ramsey's life.
I like connecting with people, and so I'll ask questions, but I might just make a statement like, yeah, it seems like blah blah blah, and they'll correct me. Like they can tell I'm into what they're talking about, and I'm trying to learn about it, and they'll correct me, and then I get that much more information, and that's good for like getting to know somebody, let alone trying to uncover wartime secrets. So and somewhere in the middle is where we're probably mostly talking today, is that this isn't a I want to win, therefore I'm going to use this tactic. This is it is a tactic, but it is a tactic that we can use in coaching and leading somebody to help both sides. And so let's, before we get too far flung here, why don't we just talk very quickly, Mike, why does this even work? Like what is behind this that makes this work?
Well, I think one of the things that really makes it work is that we have a natural defensiveness to questions.
Mm.
Just look at the standard, right? You're in a place of business. Somebody comes up to you and says, "Can I help you?"
Yep.
Nope, just looking. We don't even know we said it. It just comes out. Need some help? Nope, got it.
Right.
So there's this natural defensiveness. A statement bypasses that part of your brain.
Right.
It's built up all these walls against conversation.
Yeah.
The other piece is it builds rapport. The idea that it comes across more like a conversation. And I think that's one of the things that was remarkable to me. I was like, and as you stated as well, I already do this.
Right.
Yeah, the question is, could I be more intentional about it? Right? Because I'm a wildly curious person. I want to know how everything works. I want to know the why behind systems and people and stuff like that. It's just fascinating to me. And so this statement interaction builds rapport. It reveals depth. So sometimes if you ask a question, people will answer that question and only that question.
Right.
So if you just make a statement, they'll respond to that. Plus, add more about things that, and I think that's where we find value in this. Is we're like, oh, I wouldn't have even thought to go down that as a line of questioning,
Exactly.
but that's where all the good stuff is.
Yeah.
And the last one, I think it signals confidence. It signals curiosity. You're observing, and you're just sharing what you're observing. So you're allowing some insight into what you're thinking as well. And you're like, people lean into that, and I think it leads to sharing. It sounds like it's a one-way thing, but it actually leads to sharing from both sides.
Yeah, and it only works if you use it properly, and we're going to talk about that technique here in a moment. And let's really double click on one thing you said there, that it doesn't look like you're fishing.
Right.
Like nobody wants to be, interrogated. Like even people being interrogated who are supposed to be interrogated, they don't like being interrogated. And so this is a conversation. Like, you're, oh wow, you made me think of something, and so I make a statement, and that causes you to respond to that in a very natural way. It does build rapport because it is natural. It would be normal if you made statements in the middle of conversation. So how about you do that? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where I get some of it. So could you give a little a bit of an example maybe of sort of what this looks like let's say I'm meeting with the owner of a business, and it's a new relationship, and I want to ask something along the lines of, why did you buy this business, why did you get involved here, why did you invest in the business, why did you buy the business, what would that look like if I wanted to make it more of a declarative statement?
Oh yeah. Well, you can just hear in that sentence, all right. So why'd you buy the business?
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
You challenging me?
You're probably going to get the superficial to make money.
Right.
So yeah, I'm defensive. Yeah, looks like we're starting to fight, and I'm going
Yep.
to give you a superficial, shallow answer.
Yep.
But if you say, if you look around and go, wow, you must have seen tremendous potential in this place.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I noticed a lot of other people had looked at it, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
yeah, you just right. You get the story.
Yeah. That's good.
You get the story of why did you buy this business.
Yeah.
So you get the answer to your question, but you get that answer, and you get it phrased right. What people lead with tends to be the thing that was most important.
Right.
So when they're answering, when they're responding to your statement, they'll typically lead with, well, okay, here was the three things that I saw in this.
Yeah.
And they're probably in order even of priority. So now I've got extra goodness as far as what's important to them.
All right. So it sounds like that's on two fronts, really. On the one hand, it gives you a richer answer because they're laying up those. You're making an assumption that there was something special, and they start laying out the things that were special. And as you pointed out, it's not a why question, which is we've had a whole episode on that, talking about how it makes people defensive and feeling like they have to justify their behavior and so on. So let me take one that actually is a good question. What's your biggest challenge?
Oh
What
yeah, yeah.
what's your biggest challenge? How would you make that a declarative statement?
Man, this has to be a lot for you.
Mm,
It's
yeah,
like, man, it is. I haven't slept for 3 days. So, the team is, starting to be at the end of the rope, and I've noticed some things are falling to, all this stuff will come out.
yeah,
And so, yeah, it's a fantastic what question. It will get you, to a certain place. But yeah, you have an alternative path to go down with, man, this has to be a lot.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Let me give you another one that actually came up for me this week. I was in a coaching session, and this person had received some negative feedback, and it maybe put him in a little bit of a tailspin, to be honest. And what I did not say is, how did that make you feel? We're already there, right? We're already there on the fact that there were some negative emotions stirred up. And so what I said was, um, uh, that sounds like it hurt.
Perfect.
And I just shut up and let him talk at that point. It's not, uh, notice this one is a little bit different because instead of asking him to open up his chest, like tell me all the negative stuff going on inside you. Instead, what I did is I laid a couple things on the table and said, it'd make me feel hurt. How about you? And we've had this before, right? It's priming the pump. We talked about this with Crucial Conversations in our like 5,000 episodes we did on Crucial Conversations. Is one of the techniques when you're in a possibly high stakes, high emotion conversation is that you say, you're not willing to share, but let me suggest something that you might be thinking and see if you want to bite on that and start telling me, your perspective on that thing and start to share. So it's a way around that issue by making it a declarative statement instead.
Oh, yeah. And the beauty of that is, even if you're wrong with your assumption or with your observation, it still works.
That's right.
So, yeah, that had to hurt. And then they'll correct you. No,
not really.
Really wasn't hurt, but I was very disappointed in this person's behavior. All of a sudden, now you're getting to it. So you take your very best guess at what you believe, from an empathetic point of view would be the response.
Yep.
And if you're wrong, it's okay.
It's okay. And we're going to talk more about that here in a minute. That it's the Crucial Conversation says talk tentatively. And that's a little bit of what's happening here. Let me ask one more, and this one's a little weirder. But sometimes in a conversation, especially when you get to the middle or end, you might find yourself saying something like, where do you see this going? How do you see this playing out? As they're talking about something that they are gaining awareness on and want to take action. But if I said, where do you see this going? What's a way that I could make that more of a statement and possibly get more gold?
Something along the lines of, wow, you're really building something big here. We are. Blah, blah, all of a sudden, all of a sudden the vision, the future plans, things like that come out.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So, you're giving people an opportunity to explain more, even correct what you said, or confirm. I mean, in some cases they may be like, yeah, you get it. That's exactly right. And there's an energy level pickup, but in all cases, you're getting some gold out into the conversation so that you all can both take a step forward. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how to use it, and I think this might be a good time. I'll share coactive coaching, changing business, transforming lives. This is a Bible for a lot of people in the coaching industry. It's a very influential book, written by a lot of different people. There are 4 authors as of this edition. And I think one of them has passed away at a young age and just left a big impact on the field. And I believe this is one of the sections that lady wrote. And I just want to share it. It's from a chapter. The chapter is called Intuition. And you might see just by that concept of where we're going here, right? I've got an intuition that something's going on here. And she has a section where she says observation and interpretation. And so one of the things she says is that, we have said that intuition starts with a nudge, a feeling. It could also be an observation, although it might not be clear that you have observed something specific. Calling it simply an observation makes it neutral. You can say, I have a feeling, or I have an observation, or I have an intuition, and no one can dispute it. In other words, it's a true fact that I had a feeling, an observation, and an intuition. And so the reason that's such a big deal is that the coach is the one who's going to make a call on their own interpretation of that. But it's a fact that I had those feelings or observations or what have you. And so I can't be attached to the feeling or observation, but it's a fact that I had it. And
Right.
I might inject that into the conversation. And now I can't be attached to it. I've got to let you decide whether or not it plays out, right? You're going to be the one who, either confirms it or maybe corrects it or explains it a little more. So the last point in this section, she says, the key lesson, do not be attached to your intuition, no matter how certain you feel. Being attached to being right is something you do for your sake. Coaching is for the sake of the client. So as we go into talking about how to use it, especially if you're the manager of the person you're going to be using it on, you have to be really loose and unattached to these statements that you're making and give the person space to respond back to it. So with that being said, let's talk about how to use it. And you've got sort of a 4-step method here that I think makes a lot of sense, especially step 3. So let you explain here where you're going.
Well, and I think you're spot on. And the idea that to double down on what you said, that I can't be completely wed to my statement. If I say it too forcefully, I could even shut down or push back somebody.
Right.
That was an incredibly hard week last week.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, that sounds like I should agree with you. Right.
Right.
But if I apply, right, if I ask it from a place of curiosity, and step 1, you have to listen actively.
Yeah.
So if they're telling you something, right, I want to, as we've always learned in active listening, I want to paraphrase back using some of their words.
Yeah.
And now it feels like I'm listening. We're connected. I've heard what you've said, and now I've made a statement back that relates to that.
So it doesn't start with making an observation. You're not just going to go into this conversation making a statement. Thought about this all night, and here's what I want to say.
Right.
This is about listening first.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm listening. We're talking, and then it's like, okay, and that kind of dovetails perfectly with the next one, which is observe and reflect. All right. Sometimes you hesitated a second there, or sometimes I'll say, you made a face.
Yep.
And I don't even say what kind of face. Just, you made a face.
And that's the direct observation, right? Like that's the declarative statement. Step 2 is, it doesn't start with a declarative statement, but this is step 2 of 4. We have more to come here.
So yeah, you made a face. And then as we've talked about so many times, right? You lean into silence, you listen aggressively, you be generous with your silence. We've talked about it in so many different ways. Just be quiet.
Just
shut up. Stop talking. So yeah, you just, if we're having a conversation, they make a face, you call, you make that observation. You made a face.
Yeah.
And just be quiet.
And just be quiet.
And see what they fill in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to really admit that this has bothered me. All of a sudden, we get the reason behind that micro expression that we observe.
Right. Hey, I've seen that with sometimes when I have to challenge a team or an organization on violating their own values. This is the place where I might not even say what I might not even say, I think this violates your values. What I might say is something a little more, just sort of letting them fill in the blank. you all said punctuality was a big deal, and three of you were late to the meeting. And then you have to shut up. Like you cannot talk at that point. Um, and they'll be the ones to say, yeah, we're violating our own values, guys. We're this is what we said we wanted to be about. We got to figure out a way around this. But none of that happens if you don't shut up. You have to lean into that silence.
But yeah, and it's so easy to think about. I've made this statement, and now I want to explain my statement. And it's like it's okay. The vagueness,
Yeah,
the ambiguity of your statement actually is the part that allows them to fill in, explain, or correct what I missed.
and if you're there for them, the interpretation of the statement is for them anyway. You don't live their world, so it's up to them to interpret.
Oh yeah, I may have missed it by a mile.
I think it's huge.
And what I was thinking was going on.
Well, that leads very nicely to step 4.
Right, the idea that you got to stay curious, not assumptive. Your tone, how you should be not accusatory. It should be open, exploratory. It may go up a little bit at the end. I've done this. You walk into the facility and it's the first time you've been there, and they somebody greets you and you go, "Wow, this place is huge." And then you just be quiet. And they'll go, "Yeah, this is twice the size of our old place, and we're and they're off and running." But the tone, right? You can even put a kind of a question, kind of tone at the end of it, but it's not a question.
Yeah. And I think some of that is probably back to crucial conversations, right? We're talking tentatively. So maybe it is a really hard observation you're making. It sounds like you're trying to decide whether to fire so and so. How do you see it? Right. I'm going to stick "how do you see it" on there because I'm talking tentatively. I'm open. It's what I'm hearing, what I'm observing is X. I may be completely wrong here, which that's I'm being tentative about this because I don't know, and frankly, it's up to you to decide what you do know. So,
and you can even shorten that up to leave more space. Sounds like you have a hard decision to make. Does it? Right, and just leave it wide open to see where it goes, and then to narrow it down, go with the additional observation.
But either way, how do you see it putting it back into that this is not a set in stone thing that I've got figured out? I don't think I've got it figured out. Let's see. Let's play with this and see what happens. Shoot it out there and see what happens. Right. Shoot out your observation and see what happens. So, all right, so how do you see this being used?
Everywhere. Your every conversation in your whole life.
Not very specific.
No. So yeah, you could look at this. You're right. So think about a place where we don't always think about this would be interviews. So yeah, I'm interviewing people. I'm trying to, people interviewing are ready for your questions.
Right.
Oh, they're so ready, right? They've gone on the Google machine. They've gone on to the artificial intelligence. They've Googled what are the top answers to the top interview questions. They are ready, baby. They've even they've Googled best answers to behavioral interview questions.
Yep.
Here are the 6 scenarios you could share if you get asked this question.
We're in that day and age. You're right.
Yeah. So they're ready for you. They're armed, but they're most likely not ready for statements.
And what they're basically being forced to do is respond to the statement, right? I say forced just because it's an interview scenario. They're trying to let you get to know them, and vice versa. theoretically, they could prepare themselves by only answering every question or statement with a question,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little bit of a superpower in and of itself, frankly, and says something about them. But the idea that they might just ping off what you say
Mm-hmm.
and fill in some blanks.
Yeah, because they're going to tell you, all right, so tell me about your last job. Well, I was, in charge of acquisitions, the creative, the execution, the launch, and they're going to tell you, all this stuff, which you want to hear about,
Yep.
and you can simply make a statement. Wow, that sounds like a lot.
Yep.
It was a lot. I was actually, kind of buried.
Yep.
All of a sudden, it takes off. So yeah, some declarative statement that allows them to explain and go off script and get some real
Right.
insight into how that person felt about doing all those
Right.
things.
Right. Another thing that shows up here is just your average sales conversation. And I don't mean necessarily on the sales floor, but in any conversation where there is a sales component. Um, you know, it could be as simple as me reflecting back some statements of what it sounds to me like are the drivers for you on making this decision. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it sounds like you're wrestling with wanting this to be the safest vehicle possible for your baby, but not wanting to look like a minivan soccer mom. Right now, that's a fairly specific set of statements that might have come up in my household as my wife considered buying a minivan when we had our fourth child. But what I would really like to say is that if somebody had said that to her, she would have been like, "Yes, that's it." Right
Mm-hmm.
now, maybe let's say it's another woman and I was completely wrong. Guess what else happens is they say, "No, no, 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 no. That's not it. Safety's the biggest concern. I really want it just to be a safe vehicle." Well, I'm going to take it a different direction depending on how the answer goes to to that.
Mm-hmm.
So a sales conversation is a way you can do this as well.
Oh yeah, and it could be as simple as you're talking to somebody, you're in automotive sales, you're talking to somebody, the person bought their car, they tell you, I bought this car new 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a fact. And so if I want to get to the emotion behind that, I'll go, wow, you keep your cars a long time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm not one of those guys, that goes with the newest fads, and to get the most value, right? They're going to tell you all the things that are important to them
Right.
in their vehicles.
Or I've been stuck in this vehicle for 7 years. I've hated it for 3 of those 7 years because I've been upside down, or whatever it is.
Oh
Either
yeah.
way, you win, right? You're getting something that deepens that relationship and helps you understand what they need.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just that observation on just a cold hard fact,
Yeah,
and a statement on that, and then all of a sudden you have it going on.
I love it. And then we've been talking all along about, coaching conversations with a direct report, maybe performance reviews. Um, again, I want to stress you really need to talk tentatively when you do this. If you're in power over this person and in authority over this person, because you don't want them to just go along with what you're saying and feeling like they have to. But if you can put statements out there and not be attached to them and let them, sort of play with it and interpret it and give their own view of it, you get a lot, right? I mean, you might even get their own self-reflection on things that they hadn't thought about themselves yet.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, they may discover in the course of the conversation that, especially I think when they're correcting,
Yeah,
you make a statement and it misses the mark. As they're correcting it, they're also thinking through how they feel about it and why that didn't hit the mark.
right,
Why
right.
your statement wasn't completely accurate.
So you have been really good about using artificial intelligence to help you learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that you have a whole section here in the notes you put together for this episode that have to do with Chris Voss.
Oh yeah, yeah. Chris Voss, he's showed up in some of our training we do for that luxury manufacturer. Also shows up in some other coaching and training we do. And Chris Voss, he's the one of the top FBI negotiators in the world.
Mhm.
And he's retired, and he wrote a book, Never Split the Difference. And this is a big part of his negotiations, right? When he was trying to save somebody's life, was the use of these declarative questioning techniques.
Do you want to walk us through sort of the approach?
Yeah, he uses the empathy statements. It seems like, and then you add whatever. It seems like you're having a hard time with this. It seems
Yeah.
like this is really tough. It
Yeah.
seems like, and that kind of that like we talked about earlier, right? Right. You want it to be gentle and have the right tone, and it seems to set that tone.
Yeah.
Right, makes it less declarative and harsh.
Let me read you a list here from Coactive Coaching.
Please,
Uh,
please do.
it's just hilarious, right? This book came out, I don't know, I think in the 90s. I may be a little off on that. No, no, no. It was after that. But anyway, uh, it's a she calls this list a crib sheet for expressing intuition, right? So this is her list of, things where you could fill in the blanks at the end of these. I have a sense. May I tell you about a gut feeling I have? I have a hunch that. Can I check something out with you? I wonder if. See how this fits for you. And her favorite is my intuition tells me, right? In all cases, what really you're doing is setting it up to where it's very clear that this is how you're seeing it, and you fill this in. One of my coach trainers, just a master coach, had worked with a lot of big names. He would make the statement, and then he'd say, "Am I all wet?" And it worked for him because he was a funny guy, and that was his approach. But it's all of this is in the same vein, right? We're reacting to what we're noticing ourselves and putting it out there and seeing what you want to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I've had people say, "Have I got that right?
Yep.
Did I get that right?" And like,
Yep.
yes, and here's the explanation, or no, and here's the explanation.
Yeah. Either way, you win, right?
Yeah, and you can add to that, right? It sounds like, and it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it looks like, it sounds like, yeah. So there's just so many ways to get into this where it feels softer, and you're saying out loud, this is just my takeaway, and I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying this is what I'm sensing based upon this interaction, this conversation that we're having.
Yeah, and before we move on, just I want to really highlight the fact that you could be 100% wrong, and that's A-okay because you still win, right? Because A, they're going to correct you and give you more clarifying information, and B, you get credit for showing that you're really listening,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so why not get some goodwill by having the conversation this way? Okay, what next?
Well, the Chris Voss talks about the mirroring technique where you repeat
Ooh,
the last 1 to 3 keywords.
yeah.
And so the idea, and this is also, I think this comes from a Dale Carnegie thing. I've noticed in my life, people who've really studied Dale Carnegie, taken the classes and stuff like that, they use this technique.
Mm,
This thing just took off so fast.
mm,
Took off fast.
yeah.
That's
Yep.
it. Right. And then,
There's
and,
more there. Let them keep talking.
yeah, yeah. Instead of the classic, tell me more,
Yep.
tell me how fast, right? So you just repeat that. I've heard the words. Took off fast is pretty vague,
Yeah.
right? Well, everybody has a different sense of what that might mean. And so you're actually getting clarification on, so that you get an opportunity to have a better conversation.
I love it. And no pressure there, right? It's it's a double click that allows them to see if there's anything else there, and there typically is. Step three, we have talked about. You're calling it the tactical pause.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
When
So
we're shutting up.
here's like the 73rd way we can say, be quiet. Right? Generous with your silence, aggressive listening. Right? And now the tactical pause. Yeah, maybe we should just write a book on all the terms used for be quiet. Yeah, hush. Yeah, silence, please.
Zip the lips.
Yeah. Lock up your lips and throw away the key. You know, I mean, yeah, there's so many of them. There must be something to this.
Right.
So the idea, and we've talked about this, the 7 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a minimum of 7 seconds for people to even think about your statement,
Yep.
formulate a response, and to begin to share their response.
It will feel like more than 7 seconds, but that's why you count out in your head 7 seconds.
Right.
It's going to feel like eternity. All right. So step 4, the no-oriented statement.
Yeah, this one I don't think I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't feel as natural to me. It's a Chris Voss technique. Instead of "Did you feel overwhelmed?" at first, he would say, "It wouldn't be crazy to think you felt overwhelmed those first 3 weeks." Right? It wouldn't be right. So I go with the no, kind of the negative statement. Right? It wouldn't be hard to believe that was a lot. And I think it goes back to the correcting part of it, right? They're gonna correct you. No, it would be easy to believe that because we were.
Yeah.
They'll either go the opposite or they'll tell you why that was the case.
Yeah. Well, I've seen it as a sales technique, right? Have I caught you at a bad time? Because people are so wired to say no. They say no. Oh, great! I haven't caught you at a bad time. I'm going to keep talking. Let's have a sales conversation. So, that's maybe a negative way to look at it, a manipulative way to look at it. But here I'm trying to give you some space to where you get to say no in a way that affirms how you're feeling about whatever's going on.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So go ahead, please.
No, we've got some good stuff here, and the idea that we just make a statement instead of a question, pause. It comes from a place of curiosity, and just see what's next.
I love it.
It's really that simple, and I think as our listeners, both of them, are listening, I think they'll realize, oh, I already do this.
Yeah.
I do this, and kind of like me, I didn't know it was the thing.
Right.
I didn't know whole books had been written about it. It's just a natural way of interacting with people.
Yeah.
But if I know it, and I even know that it has a name, right? The declarative questioning, then maybe I can be more intentional about doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say, a lot of people point out, God and Jesus and the Bible use a lot of open-ended questions and so on. I'm a little uncomfortable saying Jesus Christ, life coach. But I will say, yes, he does do questions, and he also does a whole lot of declarative statements that really bring some heat and clarity to situations. All through Scripture, but from the Garden of Eden on, this kind of stuff is happening, the questions and the statements. So I think it's a well-founded technique. I'm glad you brought it to the podcast. I've been trying to slip in statements all throughout to see if I could prompt you to talk. People should go back and listen a second time to see if they catch any of those while giving us a 5-star iTunes review. Thank you.
Sounds like you put a few Easter eggs in there.
We're obviously at an end.
And that's it. Join us next time when you'll hear Mike say, well, I'm sure he'll say something pithy. Don't miss it. Next time, it doesn't take a genius.
That's good enough.